sponsored by the Kerzner family, featuring Rabbi Paysach Krohn. What a tremendous zechus it is for us at the yeshiva, not only to benefit from Rabbi Krohn's impact on Klal Yisrael each year during the Aseret Yemei Tshuva, but at home, a couple of hours ago, my son, my youngest, who's in grade 3, was mentioning, oh, isn't Rabbi Krohn coming tonight? He said, we watch his videos in the classroom. Because the Living Lessons video series that Rabbi Krohn has piloted is yet another aspect of chinuch that is in use in our 2nd grade, our 3rd grade, our 4th grade, in the boys' campus. And I'm sure that we have it used as well in our girls' campuses from time to time, spreading that legacy of Torah lessons in a very tangible fashion for all of our children. It is so appropriate that we read Parshas Vayelech, and we have this event each year as we are preparing for Yom HaKippurim. Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to Klal Yisrael as they are about to enter the land of Israel, and he tells them, not everything is going to be so simple. There are going to be some very good times, and there are going to be some very challenging times in Jewish history. And you must be aware that even though you're going into the unknown, you're going into a new land, and if you take it more broadly in the scope of Jewish history, there are going to be vicissitudes just as there are peaks. There are going to be many valleys that we have to pass through. And we need support and inspiration for those times. And Moshe Rabbeinu was not hesitant in talking about the challenges, but of course ending off with a beautiful message of a focus on Torah to maintain the future of Klal Yisrael. And one pasuk which is quite familiar to us for this period of time is brought down by Rav Nachman Breslev. It's turned into a song. It's Dvarim Perek Lamed Aleph pasuk Yud Chesed. It's turned into a song by Yoli Klein. Hashem says, "V'anochi hastir panai bayamahu." And it may appear as if I am doubly hiding my face during those periods of darkness. And Rav Nachman Breslev tells us, even when there's a double layer of what looks like unending anxiety and darkness, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there with us every step of the way. As we have the awe and the fear and the concern and anxiety as we are about to enter a new year, as we're about to enter the ultimate Yom HaDin and Yom HaKippurim, so appropriate that we receive words of inspiration from Rabbi Krohn, reminding us of the focal point that Hashem is there even in the places behester where we wouldn't always make the connection ourselves, and helping us don the glasses we need to see Hashem in everything around us. What better mindset to create as we enter Yom HaKippurim? Of course, we had the zechus before the event to meet with Rabbi Krohn over a small dinner, and he reminded all of us that it is the Or HaTorah, the light of Torah, that carries us through. And what better way to honor the Kerzner family for their incredible dedication and sponsorship of this event each and every year than to have a celebration of Torah at the outset of Rabbi Krohn's presentation. It happens to be that when Rabbi Krohn shared remarks with us downstairs, he quoted the first Mishnah in Sukkah. Little did Rabbi Krohn realize that we have 2 young men here from our grade 6 who are going to learn in the memory of Sam and Sarah Kerzner and Joe Kerzner the first Mishnah in Masechah Sukkah. And that is going to serve as the kickoff for a very special program this year, where all the Mishnayos learned in grades 4, 5, and 6 in Eitz Chaim schools are going to be learned this year in the memory of Sam and Sarah Kerzner and Joseph Kerzner. It gives me a great privilege and pleasure to introduce Noam Gilbert and Shmuel Shochet, accompanied by our grade 5 and 6 grade dean, Rabbi Osher Freilich, to learn these Mishnayos. in memory of Sam and Sarah Kersner and Joe Kersner.
Good evening, Erev Tov, honored rabbis, educators, community leaders, guests, and friends of BAYT, and especially to you, Rabbi Krohn. Bruchim habayim to everyone. 89 years ago, unbelievably so, almost to this very day, my grandparents of blessed memory, Sam and Sarah Kersner, arrived here after a long journey from Stubnitz to Pier 21 in Halifax. And fast forward from 1930 to 1945, they, like many other families, endured a loss unimaginable by hearing that every family member who remained in Poland perished in the Shoah. My grandparents, while fortunate to leave Poland when they did, thanks to some divine intervention, were stuck in a country, Canada, in 1930, not of their birth, and began a new life, la'at la'at, slowly, one moment at a time, and it was never easy. It is absolutely true, as I said last year, that in the darkest hour of their generation, Sam and Sarah Kersner's voice and steadfastness helped our community find its way. It is important for me, for a few brief minutes, to recollect some memories I have of my grandparents and my uncle, and how intertwined they were in the lives of BAYT. Our history continues to extol a simple message that's worth repeating tonight. In our darkest days, the times found us. The times found my grandparents Sam and Sarah when they arrived with little more than a suitcase that they carried, destined to build a new life here in what many would describe in the 1930s as a Trefferwelt. But they held true to the values of Torah and believing in the honesty of a simple principle. If you owe debts, you pay them. If honor, then honor, and if respect, then respect. And my Uncle Joe took it even further with a new generational sophistication and resolve to double down where his parents left off in the fight for our Jewish communities here and in Israel, and especially for our schools, the Talmud Torah, like BAYT. The times find us today, and only to suggest that we are in a place of ourselves, and we should not be compared to the struggles of my grandparents. We are here in our own generation, and we're standing with people and relatives of the founders of BAYT, some of which are here tonight as well. They were the real heroes that built not only one campus, but Rabbi Schwartz, numerous campuses of BAYT that remain strong and vibrant today. The times have also moved on for myself, my wife Rochelle, and our children Seth, Aaron, and Shayna, because we remember so clearly our late uncle counting down the moments to this annual lecture, which he felt were very appropriate in these days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And he would say to me, there is always going to be a nugget, something special we will learn from Rabbi Krohn that will allow us to begin the new year doing one more mitzvah and re-engaging ourselves to Torah and finding a message that we need to find. And that's why, as I said to dinner to Rabbi Krohn, he gave you a life contract. May you be well for a Mea Besrim. I remember the tenacity my uncle had and his fearlessness and relentlessness that was unrealistically optimistic. He was honest no matter whom he offended in doing the good deeds of Gemelas Chesed, and something he certainly inherited from my booby Sarah, who I might add could have taught Golda Meir a few tricks of her own. She was pretty tenacious in her own right. Uncle Joe chose to do good work on behalf of his community by a measure that others would find curious by today's standards, because he didn't believe that you ever needed to get credit or an award or a medal for doing a good deed. He, Rabbi Schwartz, was convinced, especially in particular to BAYT, that you should do these good deeds because he was a student at the DRC Talmud Torah. He was a product of BAYT, and until he was no longer with us, BAYT was special to him. So he entrusted his brother, my father Max, and the rest of our family to work with the UJA Foundation of Toronto and establish an endowment that would support this annual lecture for many years to come. So tonight, for as long as this memorial lecture continues, we will remember the good names and the good deeds of my late grandparents and uncle in the work they did to build this beautiful community. Rabbi Krohn, we welcome you back again tonight. Amazingly, the year's gone so quickly. But I thought I would tell you of an interesting moment that happened to me that I cannot explain. And I wanted to share it with you, and I mentioned at dinner I would not share it till I spoke tonight. This past August, my son and I were privileged to have a father and son trip in Israel. And I was wondering when I would find a spiritual moment that would come to me without me knowing it. And we arrived on the Shabbos just before Tisha B'Av. And you get off the plane and you get to your hotel and you want to get ready for Shabbos. And then as Shabbos went out, we had Tisha B'Av. So, like anybody coming to Israel for Shabbos, you want to run to the Kotel. You want to go and say your prayers and be right there. And that was fine, and we had Shabbos, and that was great. But as soon as Shabbos went out, there was this magical gravitational pull to go back to the Kotel at around 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, and people started to gather, and they would sit on the floor just in front of the Kotel in Minyanim and reading Echad. And I can't quite explain the empowerment of being there at that moment in time. And when the evening ended, we went back to our hotel and, like everybody else, began what was, I considered, a long fast. But the next day, magically speaking, we were called back to the Kotel. We were restless. We were not at peace with ourselves, sitting around walking. We had to go back again and again, and I must have counted at least 3 times that within this period we were back again. And then in the late afternoon, when you go back to the Kotel, you see men putting on their tefillin and talesim and praying, and it was a magical experience. And I felt a feeling that I could not explain. So I wanted to mention this to you because I made you a commitment last year that when I went to Israel, I would find a moment, and it came to me as unexpectedly as it was, and it was amazing. So your message, Rabbi Krohn, is important not only to us here tonight, the Friends of Eitz Chaim, but as I've said many times, to the greater Jewish community of Toronto as well, both religious and secular, because your words are universal to us. So please, Rabbi Krohn, continue with dispatch, and as my uncle would say, urgency, to teach us with your apparent ease and devotion, and to be a continuing light unto our Eitz Chaim community, and with God's help, please, with many more years, with your ever more urgently needed message, really so important today. And I invite you to the Bima now for your address.
It is such a great honor to have been invited once again by the very special Kersner family. Uncle Joe was so special to so many people, but he was very special to me. We just had some sort of a soul connection. He was probably old enough to be my grandfather, but somehow every year the renewal and the friendship was just so warm and so personal. So of course, Michael is continuing this in such a beautiful way, and to be able to remember Sam and Sarah and of course Uncle Joe is just so special, and I hope that we'll be able to be inspired together. Ever since the year 2003, I've had the great zchus, the great merit, to take, by now it's probably almost 1,000 people, to places in Europe where Yiddishkeit flourished. We've been to Poland, Lithuania, and Spain, Frankfurt. We went to Ukraine one year, Morocco. But this past year, they asked that I lead a group to a place that I had never been before. And that was the Scandinavian countries of Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. Now, some of you know that the Danish people were just very, very kind to the Jewish people, and literally 2 days before Rosh Hashanah, in 1943, one of the ambassadors from Germany, who hated the Nazis, he hated what they were doing to the Jewish people, he called one of the rabbis in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and told him, I want you to know you've got to all get out of here, because the Germans are planning to come Rosh Hashanah at night, when everybody's going to be in the shuls, and round everyone up and take them with trucks and trains to the concentration camps. And because this fellow let the rabbi know, the rabbi made sure that the Danish people helped the Jewish people get out. And 7,200 out of 7,500 Jews in Copenhagen were saved. So there was a lot to talk about Judaism in Denmark and how the Danish king was so friendly. Many people feel or say that he wore the yellow star, but he never did. But he was very, very kind. But then when I spoke about Sweden, all the Talmidei Chachamim here will know a name that I will mention, but I tell you the truth. I always believed that he lived in Eretz Yisrael, which he did. I had no idea that he spent part of his life in Sweden. This man was named Rab Shlomo Volba, a tremendous, brilliant philosopher, a tremendous Talmud Chacham, and a great person who was actually born in Berlin. And he was a secular Jew. His family was not religious. And Rabbi Monk, Alva Shalom, had a great influence on Rabbi Volba, and he sent him to the Mir Yeshiva. And there he studied and became the great person that he would eventually become. And he always said that the Mashgiach, Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz, was so close, was his Rebbe, and he always felt bad that he only had 2 years to study with him, because Rabbi Yerucham had passed away. And those of you who know the Jewish history know that the Talmidim of Mir ran from Europe, and they ran to Shanghai. But being that Rabbi Volba came from Berlin, he couldn't travel with them because he was afraid that if they saw his passport or his German papers, they would consider him a spy. So he had to go someplace else. And to the surprise of everyone, he ended up in Sweden. And there he taught Torah to the families that brought him there, the Lehman family. And he wrote pamphlets in Swedish and in German to inspire people. And he opened the Beis Yaakov. Now there's a wonderful book. You can't get it anymore by Feldheim. They've stopped publishing it. They ran out of them. You can only get it on Amazon, but it's worth getting. And it's called Lidingo. Lidingo, that's what it is. Lidingo. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. But it's a fascinating story of how over 120 girls came from the concentration camps to Sweden. And there, they were met by Rabbi Volba. When they saw him, they started crying because they didn't realize there were any Orthodox Jews left. They were told all Jews were killed. And here he opened the Beis Yaakov with Rabbi Jacobson, and the girls flourished, became mothers and grandmothers in Klal Yisrael. Most of them moved to Eretz Yisrael. But the reason that I mention Rabbi Volba is because he wrote a book about how to raise a Jewish child. It's called Planting and Building, Raising a Jewish Child. Zriya Ubinyan B'chinuch, of Torah, of Tefillah, Amunah, faith in Hashem, Chesed, every topic that you can imagine. And the reason that I started quoting him is because I've been reading his Svarim for many, many years. And in Sweden, I quoted this thing, which will be our theme for tonight. Rav Volba writes, in Chelik Sheni of Alei Shur, Rabbi Yisrael Hishrish Bonu, Rabbi Yisrael implanted, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the father of the Muslim movement, implanted within us. And he said, Ki ha'etza ha'yechida, the only way, the only idea for a person to get a good judgment from Hashem on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is that a person should become Ish Sherabim tzrichim boy. You have to become that person that the community needs. If you become that person that the community relies on you and needs you, you can be guaranteed that you're going to have a good judgment. That's what the Kurznas have always been. That's why they lived long and fruitful lives. They became what Rav Wolbe was talking about. Ish sherabim tzrichim boy. A person who the community needs. And then he goes on to say that it doesn't only mean a community activist, but he says any person, Harei Adam Sherabim Tzrichim Boy, a person who is the ideal Jew. He calls him the Yehudi Amiti, the one who raises his children properly, the one who davens properly, who learns Torah properly, and other people learn from him. Well, that's a person that the community needs, and that's a person who will have a good judgment. So again, tonight the theme is that we have to become that person, Sherabim Tzrichim Boy, that the community needs. How are we going to become that? So I want to introduce it with a very beautiful Rashi that tells us something, how Moshe treated his student Yoshua. At the end of Parshas B'Shalach, it tells us that Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, we are going to fight against Amalek. And you have to pick out soldiers to fight this war. And what happens? Vayomer Moshe el Yeshua. Moshe says to Yeshua, Bechar lanu anoshim, let us pick out people. V'tzehi lochem b'Amalek. And we're going to fight against Amalek. So Rashi says, look at that. The teacher is talking to the student as an equal. Bechar lanu, let's do it together. We're going to pick out these soldiers. We're going to choose them together. And Rashi says, leave alone, me and you. Hashve'elo, he treated him like an equal. Mikan Amru, from here we see, Yehi kavoi talmidach chaviv alech kishalach. The honor, the dignity, the validation of your student has to be so important in your mind, just like you want to be validated, just like you want to be respected. When you want to inspire somebody, and you want to teach somebody something, you have to love them and treat them with care and dignity. And then they will learn from you. They'll accept it from you. And that's why Moshe treated Yoshua as an equal. B'chalona, let's do it together. He gave him great respect and great honor. Now, Rav Hutner, the Rosh Hashiva of Chaim Berlin, asked a great question. Okay, that's a very important lesson, to treat your student like you want to be treated. But what's it doing here? That should be by when the Torah was given. So you got to treat your student equally. Or by the din of you have to love your friend. So that's what it should be doing. What's it doing here? And he gives us a great answer. He says, where is Amalek? The Torah constantly tells us that we have to get rid of Amalek. We have to fight Amalek. Who is Amalek? Where is Amalek? He says, look at the last pasuk in B'Shalach. The last pasuk tells us, Milchama Lashem b'Amalek. What is the war that God has with Amalek? Midor dor. From generation to generation. Anything that does not allow us to give over the beauty of Torah and Yiddishkeit to the next generation, that's Amalek. It could be a person, it could be a group of people, it could be social media, it could be a movement, anything that holds us back from giving over to the next generation the beauty of Torah, even terrible advertisements, that's Amalek. We all have children, hopefully grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We all have family members. We all have co-workers. We want to inspire them. We want them to be on a level of Frumkeit and Yiddishkeit. How are we going to do that? How are we going to bring it from one generation to the other? Treating with dignity. How do we treat people with dignity? I believe the answer is that tonight we have to learn the value and the mechanism of giving compliments. When you give a compliment to someone, you build them, you motivate them, and you empower them, and you validate them. I'm going to tell you a story now that the first time that I told this story, a few months ago in Brooklyn, I got so many emails, people said it's impossible. Such a story couldn't have happened. Now, I know I checked my sources, and I spoke to Rabbi Gedalia Zlotowitz, He's the head of art school today, took over for his father, Reb Meir, and he was the one who told me the story. I went back to him, I said, listen, Reb Gedalia, you know, I trust you, but you never really told me who the story happened to. You told me the story. But there's so many people questioning me. Could you go back to that fellow and ask him if I could call him, if I could speak to him? He said, okay, I'll get back to you. 2 hours later, he said, the guy said, you could call him, but you could never mention his name because he's a public figure today. And this is very embarrassing, but he'll tell you this story. Listen to this story. You have to fasten your seatbelts. A few months ago, there was a very great person, Rab David Trenk, who passed away. Rab David Trenk was a fabulous Torah educator, a great machanach. He was a principal and a rebbe in schools for more than 50 years. He was a leader in Camp Monk, also close to 50 years. And he loved every student. He embraced them, he kissed them, he was so warm. And he complimented he made you feel so good. He made you feel like you were his best friend. Everybody thought they were his best friend. Of course they were wrong, because I was his best friend. Now, many times he would read a story from one of my books in his class. And from the class, he would call me and say, Rabbi Krohn, I just read this story to my class. It's so inspirational. You've got to keep on doing these things. It's wonderful. And it made me feel very special. So one Friday night, now I spoke to the boy. He was 16 when this happened, and he didn't have a driver's license. He was in a yeshiva where Rabbi Trenk taught. And one Friday night, he went to the Rebbe's parking lot, and he stole Rabbi Trenk's car. Another kid went up and said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to the movies. He said, you're going to the movies, could you take me? The kid said, what are you, crazy? I'm doing something bad and you want me to take you? I'm not going to take you. He said, I'll get you in trouble, so you can do whatever you want, but I'm not taking you. Sure enough, the kid who didn't have a license somehow was able to get that car to start. I don't know where he found the keys, but he took the car and he went to the movies. 1.5 miles away from the yeshiva. Of course, that other boy went to Rabbi Trenk and said, you're not going to believe this, Rebbe, but this kid, he stole your car and he went to the movies. Rabbi Trenk couldn't believe it. He goes to the parking lot. Sure enough, his car's not there. So he decides to walk to the movie theater. He comes to the movie theater and he says to the lady behind the counter, he says, look, I'm a rabbi. I'm not going to the movies tonight. But there is a student that's in the theater and I've got to tell him something. Can I go in just for a moment and I'll be right out? She said, that's fine. The kid tells me he's sitting there in this dark theater, he's watching the movie. All of a sudden, he sees somebody is sitting next to him. He turns around, it's his Rebbe. He can't believe it. He said, Rebbe, what are you doing here? He said, well, I came to tell you something. He said, how'd you get here? He said, well, I walked. He said, I feel so bad you had to walk. He said, Rebbe, what'd you want to tell me? The Rebbe said, I wanted to tell you that the popcorn that they sell here in the theater is not kosher. So don't buy it tonight. Because if you buy it, when you eat something treif, it could affect your neshama, it could affect your soul. So all the food here in the theater is not kosher. Just don't buy it. And he turns to the Rebbe and said, that's it? He said, yeah, that's it. I'll see you in the yeshiva. He could not believe it. And he told me, Rabbi Trenk got up to leave, and he held on to his hand. This boy held on to the Rebbe's hand. He said, Rebbe, I'm going back with you. They left the car in the parking lot, obviously, and they walked for over an hour to get back to the yeshiva. And the fellow told me not once, we spoke about everything. He said, not once did the Rebbe say anything about the car or my having gone to the movies Friday night. And when we came back to the yeshiva, I turned to the Rebbe and I said, Rebbe, I swear I will never be Machal Shabbos again. And you know something? He never was. And today he's a famous person in America who has helped thousands of people in a way which I can't say publicly because I can't reveal who he is. How did that happen? Rabbi Trenk could have blown him out of the water. What would we do if a child that we knew stole our car, went to the movies Friday night? What would we say to that Talmud? We can't even say what we would say in a Beis Medrash. But look how Rabbi Trenk validated him. He got the message across. Just his mere presence and the fact that he spent the time and the effort to walk there. That kid got the message. But imagine what he felt like. My Rebbe loves me. He didn't blow me away. He could have done anything, and I would have deserved it. But he treated me like Moshe Rabbeinu treated Yeshua. And when you validate another person, you can get them to do anything. And that's what we're going to talk about. Validation and compliments. Now, I want to tell you about a compliment that was given that has affected every single one of us. Every one of us, and the tens of thousands that will be watching this video on TorahAnytime.com throughout the world, which is one of the great organizations in Klal Yisrael. If you're ever bored, you have nothing to do, turn on your computer and put on TorahAnytime.com. Or you can put it on your iPhone, wherever you're traveling, wherever you're doing dishes or whatever you're doing. There are so many wonderful, wonderful lectures on TorahAnytime.com. So, listen to this. Many years ago, when I was a teenager, now I guess they have it in Canada also, but most of you know what color war is, right? Everybody knows what color war is. I lived a whole year for color war. Just like I lived for the Kurzner lecture, then I lived for the color war. Now every year I lost, except when I was general. Hashem had Rahmanas on me and let me win when I was general. But when you're general, you have to pick out certain key campers or counselors that have talent. So you always have to pick out a fabulous artist to be on your side because he's going to draw the banner. So in Camp Aguda that year, the one who was the best artist was a fellow, you may have heard his name, Meir Zlotowitz. He was a lefty, a fabulous artist, and everybody wanted them on their team because nobody could draw a banner like he did. Fine. He went through camp years, he learned in a kollel a few years, and then he opened a business. Now, what kind of business is an artist going to open? He made scrolls. You ever see, like, they give scrolls or manuscripts to people that are honored, like Michael got tonight? So he called his business Art Scroll. That was his business, art, because he was an artist, and scroll, because he drew scrolls. Now, when we were in camp, Meir Zlotowitz had a very close friend. His name was Meir Fogel. And tragically, Meir Fogel died very young. He had no children. He married, but he had no children. He died, I think he was still in his 20s. And Meir Zlotowitz wanted to do something very special. So in 1975, he decided, you know what? I'm going to write a commentary on Megillas Esther. And I'm going to give it out to my friends. I'm going to do a very thorough job. And then when people read it before Purim or on Purim, and people learn Torah, it'll be a merit to the soul of Meir Fogel. So he finished it, and he got a friend of his, Rabbi Nasser Sherman, who was the principal of the Stolman Yeshiva, to write an introduction. And he showed it to Rabbi David Cohen. Rabbi David Cohen was a very close friend of Meir Zlotowitz, and a tremendous Talmud Chacham. And Rabbi David Cohen said, "You're going to give this out? What are you talking about? You got to publish this. This is fabulous. Nothing like this has ever been written in English." He said, "What do you mean publish it? I'm not a publisher. Feldheim is a publisher." He said, "Well, don't you have a company?" "Yeah, well, we make scrolls." "Yeah, what's the name of your company?" He said, "Art Scroll." "Why don't you publish something under the Art Scroll name?" And that's what he did. And within 2 or 3 weeks before Purim, they sold 20,000 copies. Because it was brilliantly put together, not only artistically, but the philosophies and the source material was great. And then all of a sudden, Meir Zlotowitz thought, hey, wait a second. If the world wants this, so why don't we do Rus for Shavuos, and we'll do Eicha for Tisha B'Av, and Kehelas for Sukkot, and Shir Shirim for Pesach. And that's how Art Scroll started. One compliment. Rav David Cohen's compliment. There's not one Orthodox Jew in the world who speaks English who doesn't have at least one Art Scroll book. Most of us will be using Machzorim of Art Scroll. Half the people that will be at the Siyum HaShas on January 1, 2020, there'll be over close to 95 to 100,000 people there. Half of them that finish Shas will be with the Shas and Shas. that was published by ArtScroll. I hope many people have Maggid books, which is also published by ArtScroll. But everybody had one compliment. Rabbi Cohen told him, you got to publish this, it's great. And look at that. Everybody was affected. That's what a compliment does. We have to learn to compliment people. And you know something? I'll tell you a secret. You're allowed to compliment your spouse. Most people don't know that. They've forgotten that. You're allowed to say good things about your spouse. I'm not going to ask by a raise of hands, when was the last time a man thanked his wife for supper? Or when was the last time a woman thanked her husband for bringing money into the house? We take each other for granted. I want to show you now something. This is absolutely incredible. Now, because of our wonderful videography here, you're going to be able to see something that will stun you. A few months ago, at the end of Chumash Shemais, Parshas Pikudei, so that's around the April time, I get a call from Houston. And a fellow calls me and says, Rabbi Krohn, do you remember you were in Houston a couple years ago? I said, yeah, of course. There was a fabulous Shabbos there. I mean, it was before they beat the Yankees, you know, so I could still go to Houston, or whatever. But he said, yeah, it was a great Shabbos. He said, do you remember you met a kid with one hand? I said, I met a kid with one hand? I would think that I would remember that. I don't remember that. He says, well, you did. And not only that, but you told him that when he gets bar mitzvah, if he sends you an invitation, you're going to try to come. I said, well, I didn't get an invitation from a bar mitzvah boy in Houston. He said, I'll tell you why you didn't get it. See, a few weeks ago, when his dad was sending out invitations, the little boy said, Dad, how about Rabbi Krohn? Remember he said he might come? Can we send him an invitation? And the father said, no. He said, why not? So the father said, well, because he's such a nice guy. And, you know, he's very busy. And, you know, if he gets an invitation, he might feel obligated to come. So I don't want to put pressure on him. We're not going to send him an invitation. So the little boy, of course, he couldn't send an invitation himself, but he felt bad. So this Kohler fellow calls me a few days before the bar mitzvah. He says, I know you didn't get an invitation, but could you just call him to give him a bracha, a blessing? I said, of course, what's the question? Give me his number, I'll call him in 5 minutes. I get him on the phone. His name is Nehemiah Passel. Now, this kid has only one hand, right? So I'm not going to talk to him about tefillin, because that's impossible, right? So I said to him, Nehemiah, I heard such wonderful things about you. Are you going to read the Torah this Shabbos? He said, yeah, I will. And I said, are you going to daven for the Yomit? You're going to read the Baal Shachris or the Bama? He said, yeah, I even put on tefillin. I said, what'd you say? You put on tefillin? I thought you have only one hand. He said, I'll send you a picture, I'll show you. I said, how are you going to send me a picture? He said, I text. Now, I don't know if you can see this. Can we see this on the screen? If you see it on the screen, you see he's got only a left hand. And look at this. This is the most heartbreaking picture. Now he has only a right hand, only up to the elbow, and he's got one finger on his right hand. And with his left hand, he puts on the tefillin. And he's got to put it on, the ritzuos, the straps have to be put on 7 times. So in this picture, you see how he has to put it on very close to each other because there's just no room. He's got only a half a hand on his right side. And here you have this delicious picture with his father Brian, how he's reading the Torah on a Monday and Thursday. So I hope that you can see it up there. And I'm talking to this kid, and he is such a delicious child. And then all of a sudden it occurs to me, hey, wait a second. I'm not the guy who should be giving him chizuk. I know a guy in Sao Paulo, Brazil, who lost his arm, his entire left arm when he was 19 in a car accident. He's the one who should call him and give him chizuk because he went through it. I call him up. His name is Mr. Wally Stern. I speak to his daughter Ariella. I said, do you think your father would be willing to write a letter to this boy who never has only one hand and is having a bar mitzvah? She said, I'm sure he'll do that. And then Wally Stern sent him, I thought for sure he was going to send him one paragraph. He sent him a 3-page email. Now, I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but I will read you part of it. 3 pages. You know what his father Brian told me? When they got this, they printed it out, and they framed it, and they hung it in Nehemiah's room. Listen to how a person compliments and makes a little child with one hand feel like $1 million. Dear Nehemiah, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. On the occasion of your Bar Mitzvah, it's my privilege and honor to wish you from the bottom of my heart that Hashem grant you to always go from strength to strength and merit to go on and become an Adam Gadol, a great person. He says, my name is Wally Stern. I'm 89 and live in Sao Paulo. I lost my entire left arm in a car accident at the age of 19. At the time, I was completely devastated. But my first thought flashing through my mind was, I will not let this accident drag me down and stop me in life. I will try to continue to be my best in life and do business as usual, as if nothing happened as far as possible. And then he teaches Nehemiah what a handicap is all about. And he says, my child Nehemiah, let me tell you, a handicap is only a handicap if you believe it is. But if you believe that you are perfectly normal and you go on acting that way, everyone will treat you the same way. And then he goes on to say, of all the wonderful things that he did, those of you who have the Art Scroll Shas, take a look at Masechta Huriyas. Wally Stern sponsored it. And he writes, he spends a lot of time raising money and helping in Efrat, which is an organization that helps pregnant women in Israel. Now, this is my favorite paragraph. It never stopped me from driving a car. Imagine that. Imagine a cop stops a guy who's got one hand. How does he give him his license? But whatever. Okay. It never stopped me from driving a car. I used to play tennis when I was younger. And listen to this. And I even started to ski at the age of 50. Right? I've got 2 hands and 2 legs. I wouldn't get on skis. Right? And this guy's got one hand. One hand, I know him very well. I've seen him many times. And he's skiing, and I did so for many years. He says, I know what it feels like to get up there in front of everyone. And he says, this Shabbos, when you're going to get up there and you're going to read the Torah, just go up with serenity and confidence. And you will see at the end of the day, the basis for people to decide how to relate to you is your own behavior and how you relate to yourself. And then he goes on to wish him that he should do well and that he should grow. And Rabbi Levine, I don't know if you were in Telz at that time, but he was the first one, he writes, to come from Sao Paulo. You know the Dullingers, so he's related to the Dullingers. And he was the first one from Sao Paulo to go to the Telz Yeshiva. That's what validation is all about. That's what a compliment is all about. When you make somebody feel so special that no matter what they're going through in life, they can look in the mirror and say, I am special. I could accomplish. That's really what it's all about. So let me tell you a fabulous story. The punchline is in Yiddish. I'm sure many of you understand Yiddish, but of course I'll translate. There's a fellow who called me up from Lakewood. Now, wherever I go, people are telling me stories. Even tonight, 3 people told me stories. Now, I'm a nice guy. I listen to everybody, but 98 out of 100 you can't use. But, I mean, I might use this story. It's unbelievable that I quoted the first Mishnah in Sukkah, and that's what the kids had planned before. That's like unbelievable. But the point is, so people call me with stories, and I'm very grateful. So there's this fellow from Lakewood. His name is Simcha Weinman. He told me he's a very famous photographer. He does many weddings, bar mitzvahs, and events in Lakewood. He's a married fellow. And he said, what I love to do is take pictures of great rabbis learning Torah. I have many, many pictures like that. He says, but I just want you to know, Rabbi Krohn, I can't learn so well. I find it very difficult. I try with many people, I don't understand it so well. But I have a great admiration for those who do study Torah. So in 1997, I decided I'm going to go to Israel. And I heard that every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, Rabbi Yashiv, who, of course, is Reb Chaim Kanievsky's father-in-law, Rabbi Yashiv at the time was the Gadol Hador. At 4 o'clock in the morning, he sits by an open window and he learns. Now, everybody who knew Rabbi Yashiv knew that he always learned out loud. And that's something that everybody here should remember. When you learn quietly, most likely you're going to forget. But if you say the words out loud, it makes an impression. So ever since he was 10 years old, he had a certain sing-song that he learned the Gemara. And even when he was 90, people would sit in the Beis Medrash, listen with his soft, beautiful voice, how he would learn the Gemara. So now Simcha Weinman comes to Eretz Yisrael in 1997. He gets up 3:30 in the morning, and he comes to where Rabbi Yashiv his house is. And sure enough, he sees a figure in the window, and he gets closer and closer, and of course it's Rabbi Yashiv. And he can hear him singing the Gemara. And he picks up his camera, he frames what he's about to take, and he is so overwhelmed by the beauty of the greatest Torah scholar in the generation learning Torah, he puts down his camera and he starts crying. He's so overwhelmed. Now, 4 o'clock in the morning, a voice carries. Rabbi Yashiv is not used to anybody, being out there at 4 o'clock in the morning. And he hears somebody, he looks up, there's a guy there with a camera and he's crying. So he goes like this, come inside. And Simcha Wyman told me he comes in and he says, and Rabbi Yashiv says to him, is everything okay? Why are you crying? He says, Rebbe, I love people who learn Torah. I came special to Israel to take pictures, and I wanted to take a picture of the Rebbe learning Torah. And it was so beautiful. I was so overwhelmed because I myself can't learn. I tried, but I don't understand everything. And Simcha Wyman told me all of a sudden he started crying again. Rabbi Elyashiv waited for him to finish and listened to what Rabbi Elyashiv said. He said, Deine jüdische Tränen sind wert mein ganzes Lernen. Your Yiddish tears are worth my whole learning. Could you imagine that? The Gadol Hador, the greatest Torah scholar, is telling this young man, your tears, God accepts your tears because he knows they're sincere. They're worth my whole learning. Now, whether he meant it as an exaggeration or not, but I can tell you, Simcha Wyman told me he was so validated that he went back to Lakewood, he hired a young man half his age to learn with him, and now he learns every morning, even though he doesn't understand everything, but he's learning every day. You know why? Because his tears are worth Rabbi Yashiv's learning. So that compliment, that validation, that empowerment made him feel so special that he decided, no matter what, I'm going to learn Hashem's Torah every morning. That's what a compliment is all about. Now I'll tell you a great story that happened with Reb Chaim Oizer Gruzhinsky, who was the Gadol Hador, the great Torah scholar in Vilna in the early 1930s, the late 1920s, early 1930s. He and the Chavetz Chaim, they ran the Jewish world. I always considered Reb Chaim Oizer the Zaidi of Klal Yisrael. If you would see a picture of him with his long white beard and his big Litvish yarmulke, it's so saintly, it's so holy. So a young man once came to Reb Chaim Oizer and he said, Rebbe, could you give me a bracha? This guy was in his early 20s. Could you give me a bracha that I shouldn't have to go to the Russian army? I'm afraid to go to the army. Could you give me a bracha they should reject me? So Reb Chaim Oizer looks him up and down. He says, are you a Shomer Shabbos? Do you observe Shabbos? And the boy couldn't lie. He said, no. He said, do you wear tefillin? He said, no. He said, do you wear tzitzis? He said, no. Rabbi Chaim Oizer says, I give you a blessing that the Russian government should be as disappointed in you as I am. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? And you know what? Next week the kid came back. He said, Rebbe, your bracha came true. They rejected me. And he picked up his shirt. He showed him he was wearing tzitzis. And he wore tefillin. And he was a Shomer Shabbos the rest of his life. Why? Because he didn't blow him out of the water. Because just like Rabbi Trank, he got the message across. But he got it through in such a beautiful way that the boy understood the message, but he didn't feel bad. He understood the love that Rabbi Chaim Oizer had for him. Just like Rabbi David Trank felt this kid has potential. I'm going to wipe him away and he'll be away from Yiddishkeit forever. That's not how you do it. If you're frustrated and you're angry, that's how you do it. And then you lose that child forever. But if you can control yourself and look for the good in the person and get the message and make him feel valued, that he is a Yid, that he has potential, and that he could become that person, Ish Sherabim Tzrichim Boy. Every one of us can do that. At the dinner I mentioned tonight a very sad study that was taken recently. And the study showed that only 8% of humanity fulfills their potential. You know what that means? 8% of humanity, 92% of us don't fulfill our potential. That's horrendous. Why does that happen? Because people have low self-esteem, because everybody's criticizing them all the time. You can't listen to what your mother-in-law says about you. And you can't listen to what your sister-in-law, your brother-in-law, you haven't spoken to in 6 years, says about you. Every one of us can be great. And when you tell somebody they can be great, and you mean it sincerely, they will be great. But if you tell somebody that they're nothing, they're going to believe it. I may have told you this story last year. When I was in the 9th grade, my teacher, Mr. Hyman Ozer, he said to my mother at PTA, he said, Mrs. Krohn, your son is a good writer, but he's never going to write a book. So my mother said, why do you say he'll never write a book? Nah, he's too religious. Nobody's ever going to read what he writes. So 25 years later, when my first market book came out, I went looking for Mr. Ozer. And I wanted to see Abelepnoch, if the guy's still living. And sure enough, he was the principal in a big school in Nassau County, in Hafta. I called him up, I said, Mr. Ozer, remember you taught in Torah with us 25 years ago? He said, yeah, I had some good years there. I said, my name is Paysach Krohn, remember me? He says, yeah, I think I do. I said, I have a present for you. I said, after 25 years, you got a present for me? I said, when can I bring it? Oh, you can bring it tomorrow. I said, okay, I'll be there. Sure enough, I come into his big office, and I tell him, Mr. Ozer, I'm sure you don't remember this, but you know, you told my mother 25 years ago that I could never write a book. And I just want to tell you, I just published a book with the art scroll on Jewish short stories. I'd like to give it to you, and I'm going to autograph it. Well, the guy could not believe it. He comes out of his big desk, puts his arm around me, says, come with me. He takes me into one of the classrooms. He says, boys, I want to show you a former student of mine. He just wrote a book, and I taught him how to write. Let him think he taught me how to write. But you know something? We became very close friends from that incident. And at his retirement dinner, I was the guest speaker. And of course, I told the story. But the point is, imagine, before I started writing that book in 1984, if I would have thought, this is crazy. I'm going to write a book? What am I wasting my time? My favorite teacher told me I can't write a book. You could all be great. Just remember that. And we can encourage each other, because every one of us has talents. Every one of us is different, and every one of us can accomplish. And that's what we have to remember. You know, Rabbi Meir Shapiro asked a very wonderful question. We all know Rabbi Meir Shapiro, the founder of the Daf Yomi movement, the Rosh Hashiva in Lublin. And he once asked an interesting question. At the end of Parshas B'chukaisai, it tells us the laws about somebody who wants to donate a certain amount of stock or charity. And what if somebody says, I want to give the amount of how much a man is worth, or I want to give an amount of how much a woman is worth, or a child is worth. Torah gives you an amount. So he asked, what's it got to do at the end of Parshas B'chukaisai? It should be by Tzedakah, by the Beis HaMikdash. Why is it doing at the end of Parshas B'chukaisai? And he says, tremendous insight. He says, you know why? Because at the end of B'chukaisai, it tells us about the Teichacha, all the tragedies and the troubles and the travails that Klal Yisrael will go through. So when somebody has difficulty, he can say, oh, I'm worth nothing. God hates me. I'm out of here. No. Just remember, you got value. Every one of us has value. For whatever reason, God had to make us go through whatever we went through. One day, hopefully, we'll be able to figure it out. But everyone has value. Never, ever give up on yourselves. And that's what we have to do. We have to encourage each other so we never, ever give up on ourselves. And you know something? It's so important to give compliments that I would like to give everybody homework. I hope you don't mind. Let's see if from now, Thursday night, till Shabbos starts tomorrow night, you could give 5 compliments. Try it. Not only will you change the person that you give the compliment to, but you'll be changed yourself. Because you're going to start looking for the good. And you know something? A study was done in Harvard. 19 out of 20 comments that parents make to children is negative. Why'd you fail the test? Why'd you forget your bike? Why'd you forget your lunch? Why'd you wake up late? Why did you go to shul? You know what Rav Montes Solomon says about those parents and their kids? Those kids are not dropouts. They're pushouts. And you know what Rabbi Matisyahu also says? You know who are the worst offenders? Please, excuse me. He says those teachers who treat their homes like classrooms. He was talking about women teachers. But it's anybody. Your house is not a classroom. Friday night, you know who should say the Dvar Torah? The father or the mother. There's so much information. A kid comes home and says the Dvar Torah didn't say it perfectly. So the father's angry at him, the mother's angry. For what? You teach him what the parsha is all about. You could learn it. There's so much information out there. Don't make the kid feel bad. The table should be a wonderful, happy place. As Rabbi Matisyahu says, the house is an Ori Mikvah. That's where a kid should feel safe. Not that he feels that he's always criticized. He's got to be complimented. I'll tell you a personal story. A little embarrassing to talk about, but I'll tell it to you anyway. I have a daughter, Baruch Hashem. She's a grandmother today, but I just want to tell you, she of all my 5 children, she's the one that had the most difficult time with Shidduchim. And you know, when the daughter's getting a little bit older, you get frustrated, she's frustrated, you blame her, she blames you. You know, it's everything. It's not an easy parsha. And one night I must have said something to her. I felt terrible that I said it. And I came over to her and I said, Faggy, you know, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said, but you know that I love you, right? She said, Todd, of course I know you love me. I said, how do you know I love you? She said, Todd, you know how many times you told me that you are a millionaire because I'm your daughter? And it's true. You don't have to raise your hands. When was the last time you told your child you're a millionaire because that person is your child, your son or your daughter? If you go home and you tell your child, and you really mean it, and I do mean it, that you're a millionaire because you have that child feels they can do anything. And of course she knew that I loved her. Okay, Baruch Hashem, she's married with children, now grandchildren, Baruch Hashem. But the point is, you have to make the person feel you love them, that you care about them. So I'll tell you an amazing thing. There was a person, I just have to see in my notes what his last name was. He was a mashgiach in the Gary Yeshiva. His name was Rav God Eisner. He just passed away, an elderly gentleman. And they wrote 2 books about him, just fabulous. So in one of the books, they tell a story that he was a 16-year-old boy in the concentration camp. And the war was just about over. The Germans knew they were losing. And so they made the famous death march. The death march was they had people marching for no reason whatsoever. And people were so exhausted. They just fell, they collapsed. And if they couldn't continue, they would be shot and killed. They were famished. And this 17-year-old boy had it. He fell, he could not get up. And people said, God, get up. We'll carry you. You gotta get up, they're gonna kill you. He said, I don't care, I can't anymore. I'm too weak, I'm too exhausted, I can't. And then somebody bent over him and said to him, Godala, get up. I'll put your arm around my shoulder, and somebody else will put their arm around your shoulder, and we'll carry you. Godala, get up. And he got up. And he walked, they carried him over the shoulders. And years later they asked him, why did you get up? So many people had asked you to get up, and you didn't. And he said the most amazing thing. He said, nobody ever called me Godala except my mother. That name was so endearing to me that when I heard that, I got a strength that I didn't know I had. When was the last time we called a child or a friend with a compassionate, loving nickname? That's what we need. We live in such a difficult world. There's so many problems. We need validation. We have to show people, the brothers and sisters in Klal Yisrael, that we love them. And how do we show them that we love them? By complimenting them, by telling them that they're special. So Faggy's daughter, it happens to be, is Adina Chesser. And she told me something. She works on these videos that we were talking about before, Living Lessons. She works with her father, Hananya. And she told me she was working for some company. She's worked for many companies. And she makes these animation videos. And she told me that one school, Sheva High School, it was late at night, 11:30 at night. All of a sudden, they got a whole order of Dougies for the people in the office. The people were working overtime. And when they got this whole group of Dougie stuff, I can't eat it, it's all spicy. I don't know where my kids get these taste buds. Didn't get it from me. But a lot of people love Dougies, you know, and all the poppers and spices. I mean, you know, it's not for me, but whatever. But she said she felt so validated. How much did it cost to get an extra portion of Dougies and to send it at 11:30 at night? But of course, she worked every night that way for them afterwards. Because that's validation. That's what compliments are all about. You know, I have a friend, he's a very religious fellow, but never his mother was not. And she once told him, she said, Mitch, you know I'm dying soon. She was over 90 and she was dying. She said, I don't know if you're going to say Kaddish for me. I'm not going to know the difference. But I will ask you this. If you got any compliments to say it now, while I can enjoy it. And you know something? I'll tell you something that somebody told me. I can't say his name because many of you know his name. He was flying, I think, from Chicago to New York. And there was terrible, terrible turbulence. And he really thought the plane was going down. Now, I remember once, there's one Jewish stewardess that I know, she was in Montreal. She told me, I want you to know, you should never think that a pilot has no control of the plane, no matter what the turbulence is. They have control. But anyway, he didn't know that. And he thought it was over. He started saying Shema Yisrael. He said, Hashamnu. It was over. People were screaming and crying because the plane was sinking. And he says, Paysach, I want to tell you something. I'm so embarrassed to tell you this. But you know what I was thinking as the plane was going down? I was thinking, what are they going to write about me in the Ated? What are they going to write about me in Ami or Mishpacha? You know, those are the newspapers that give you all the wonderful eulogies. And then I guess God had Rahmanas on him, and you know, the pilot did get control, and you know, he's still here to talk about it. Why do we have to wait till somebody dies that we say all the nice things about them? Wouldn't you want to hear all these nice compliments while you're, you know, breathing and smiling and enjoying it? You know, I have a guy in our shul, his name is Gedalia Banquet. He's my Rebbe in saying Good Shabbos and in greeting people. He is so wonderful that after everybody says Good Shabbos to the rabbi, they all go to Gedalia. Because he gives you a good firm handshake and he always says something wonderful. Every week he tells me the same thing. Rabbi Krohn, you're a giant among men. How many times can you listen to that? Believe me, 1,000. I know it's coming, but I love every second of it. Because he believes it. Okay, maybe I don't believe it. Maybe eventually I will. But that's validation. That's a compliment. That's making somebody feel special. And we've got to learn that. That's how you become Ish Sherabin Tzrichim Boy. Because we all gravitate to these people. The community needs them. We have to build the reputation of others, not break it. It's so easy to break. But when you make everybody feel special, and you talk about somebody in public, that person will do anything for you. I mean, one of the people that I'm waiting to speak about is Adina Abramov. She deserves a tremendous round of applause. I'm sure some of you know how diligently she works, but I can tell you, even though we do this every year, but I'm on the phone with her 20 times. What time, what day, what hour, what plane, cancel the plane, not cancel the plane. It's amazing. She's extremely, extremely capable. And I'm very grateful to her. And you have a person like that, but how many people compliment her? When was the last time you complimented somebody who davened for the Amid? Or somebody who laned? All of us have children that read the Torah. You know how many hours they prepare? God help them if they make a mistake. The whole shul will woke up. But otherwise, if everything goes smooth, nobody says anything. Is that right? Does anybody ever say thank you? Anybody ever go over to a rabbi and say, you know, that was a great speech, that was so inspirational? Heaven help him if he made a mistake, right? So we have to change. We have to learn to give compliments, and we must. Let's see if we could give 5 compliments between now and tomorrow. So let's review everything that we said, and we'll end with a fabulous, fabulous story. Let's remember what Rabbi taught us. If you want to have a good judgment on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, you got to be that person. Ish shirabim tzrichim bod. Let's remember that sentence. Become that person that the community needs. Who does the community need? Somebody that's building people. Somebody that's giving energy to people. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu, Rav Hutner taught us, spoke to Yeshua as Talmud as an equal. Let's remember that magnificent story of Rabbi Trank. How that young 16-year-old who stole his car and went to the movies on Shabbos. And all the Rebbe wanted to tell him was about the popcorn. But he got the message across. Let's remember how Rabbi David Cohen's compliment to Meir Zlotowitz affected him, affected ArtScroll, affected hundreds of thousands of Jews around the world. We're all better because of ArtScroll. The Masorim, the Chumashim, the Gemaras, everything. It's just phenomenal. One compliment changed it all. Let's remember how Wally Stern wrote that beautiful letter, that beautiful email to Nehemiah Passel in Houston, and how he hung it up, how his parents hung it up, because that was special. Let's remember how Rabbi Yashiv said to that Simcha Wyman, Deine Yiddische Treuren sind wert mein ganzer Lernen. And it motivated him to learn every morning. Let's remember how Rabbi Chaim Ozer treated that boy. A chutzpah. A kid who's not Shomer Shabbos, doesn't wear tefillin, doesn't wear tal, doesn't wear tzitzis, and he's going to the great rabbi for a blessing. I give you a blessing that they should be as disappointed in you as I am. He didn't break him. But he got the message across. And let's remember how that person, Ezra Malitsky, he's the one who did it from Shevach High School, how he sent extra duggies for all the people in the office at 11:30 at night. You didn't have to do that. Person has to meet a deadline, they have to meet a deadline. No, but you go out of your way and you validate somebody, you make them feel special. That's really what it's all about. And let's remember that beautiful story, how that fellow Godel Eisner, how he got up with that extra strength because somebody called him by that very, very precious name. So I just want to tell you one more story. And this will be the crux of what we've come to talk about tonight. At the end of the Second World War, there were places that Yidden went to, they were called DP camps, displaced persons, because people had no place to go. They had no visas, they had no papers to get to any country. So one of the places that they went was a place called Felderfink. And the Kloisenberger Rebbe was there. Now the Kloisenberger Rebbe was a great, great tzaddik who tragically lost a wife and 11 children in the war. And yet, even though that he had so much that he lost, he built people. And he built a yeshiva for the boys, a girls' school, a Beisako for the girls, and everybody sought his advice. There was a boy, his name was Meshulam, a Hasidic boy, who never lost his parents and his siblings, and he threw away Yiddishkeit. Nobody's going to blame him, and people tried to convince him. Nothing happened. He wouldn't listen to anyone, didn't want to talk to anyone about religion. He was not interested. So somebody went to the Kloisenberger Rebbe and said, Rebbe, you know, Meshulam used to be a very religious boy, comes from a religious family. He threw it all away. Would you be able to speak to him? So the Rebbe said, yeah, of course, I'll be happy to speak to him. Tell him that I'd like to see him. So they go to Meshulam and they tell him the Rebbe wants to see you. Now, he knew what the Rebbe would want. He was not happy about going, but you can't say no to the great rabbi. So he said, okay, I'll come. And he came, and the Rebbe sat him down, and he said to him in Yiddish, Dehes Meshulam? Your name is Meshulam? He didn't look at the Rebbe, he just said, yeah. He said, you're the son of Banish? Your father was Banish? He said, yeah. The Rebbe said, I heard you used to be a diligent Torah learner. He said, yeah. And then the Rebbe said something to him that Meshulam wasn't ready for. All of a sudden the Rebbe said to him, you're angry, right? Well, he wasn't prepared for that comment. The Rebbe said, I know why you're angry. Because they took the best ones and they left you. He said, I feel the same way. I lost a wife and 11 children. They took the best ones and they left me. Me and you were the same. They took the best ones and they left us. And the Rebbe started saying it again. That's why you're angry. That's how I feel. They took the best ones and they left us. And all of a sudden the Rebbe started crying and he put his head on the shoulder of Meshulam. And all of a sudden Meshulam just felt that warmth from the Rebbe. And he started crying. They both could not stop crying for 25 minutes. Meshulam told me the story. When he was older, he lived in Baltimore. He came to Queens one night, and I spoke to him. He said, for 25 minutes, we both cried. And the older Rebbe kept repeating, they took the best ones and they left us. He said, after 25 minutes, I just couldn't cry anymore. And the Rebbe stopped crying as well. And he kissed me on the forehead. And I left. And he said, that night, I said Kriya Shema. I said Shema for the first time in 5 months. And I still remember I was sitting in the kitchen in Kew Garden Hills with Meshulam. I said, you got to tell me, what was the difference with how the Rebbe spoke to you and how everybody else spoke to you? And he said words to me that I'll never forget. He said, everybody else spoke to my head. The Rebbe spoke to my heart. And that's the difference. When you speak to somebody's heart, you can reach them. You have an effect on them. But if you just give a plain superficial compliment, they know that and it doesn't mean anything. If you tell somebody that you love them, you really have to love them. And if you tell them that you respect them, you really have to respect them. Otherwise, don't say it, it's worse. And that's what we have to learn tonight. Every one of us can become Ish Sherabim Tzrichim Boy. We can become that person by being involved in community, and we can become that person by being the Yehudi Amiti, being the Erlich Hayid. You know, I want to give you a suggestion. I don't know if you know this. I may have told you this once, but every Thursday, I record a blessing for over 500 orphans, kids, teenagers that have lost a parent during their teenage years, either a father or a mother. And after I make that recording, I make a recording for over 1,000 kids from single divorced homes. Many, many kids are living with only one parent. And somehow I'm involved in Sister to Sister. The first organization is called Links. And I record this blessing on Thursday and they get it Friday at 1 o'clock. And I want to tell you something what I told them today. And I think that this is something, as we prepare for Yom Kippur, that we could all do. I told them that there are many, many people who don't refer to Yom Kippur as Yom Kippur. They call it the Yom HaKadosh, the holy day. Many Hasidim don't say the word Yom Kippur. They say the Yom HaKadosh, the holy day. And I heard today something fascinating. I never thought about it before. There are many Gemaras that we have about the holidays. There's a Gemara Rosh Hashanah. There's a Gemara Sukkah. There's a Gemara Psachim. We even have a Gemara Shabbos. But it's not called Yom Kippur. It's called Yuma. Yuma means the day. The holy day. The day. And you know something? When I heard that, I remembered something so cute. When my daughter was very young, a different daughter. One time we were talking, and she knew I was a writer. I did Brisson, and I speak. She said, Tom, are you the? I said, what does that mean? She said, the important one. So, whatever I answered. But when you say you are, it's the day. It's a holy day. How can we make the day holy? I'll tell you. When you're davening, it's holy. And when you're listening to the Torah, it's holy. But you know what I would give you a suggestion? Every one of us, let's prepare for the dull moments of Yom Kippur. What do they mean by dull moments? Those moments between davening, or when they're selling the aliyahs, or any other break in the action. Take a Tillim to shul. Take a Mishayas. Take an English book of stories that are inspirational. And don't talk anything that has not to do with holiness of the day. Let's sanctify the day. Let's elevate this one day. We're not eating, we're not drinking, we're not wearing regular shoes. Many of us are dressed in white. It's a holy day. Let's keep the entire day holy. Now, only by planning ahead can you do that. Because when they're selling the aliyah, so there's a break between Mincha and Nila, or between Musaf and Mincha, people are just schmoozing. Let's not schmooze this Yom Tov. Let's keep it holy. And if we keep it holy, we're going to become holy people. And one of the ways of becoming holy people is by loving fellow Jews. By building Jews with compliments and sincere feelings of appreciation. If we can do that, as Michael mentioned, this is the takeaway point. Let's become those people. Everybody needs validation. Everybody needs empowerment. And if we can do that, I believe that'll give us a great year of bracha, hatzlacha, health, yeshuas, nechamais, shidduchim, friendship, great marriages, great relationships with kids. I wish that for all of you. I wish that for everybody, not only in Toronto, but all over the world. So that next year we'll be able to have the Kurzner lecture in the Binyanei Ha'omah in Jerusalem. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.
Once again, wanted to thank Rabbi Krohn for coming in the inclement weather all the way to inspire us as we enter Yom Kippurim. And we want to express our gratitude to Mr. and Mrs. Michael Kurzner and the entire Kurzner family for annually providing us with this special inspiration. Please join us for a collation outside. It's now 9:39. There's a Mariv downstairs at 9:45, but we'll also try to get a minyan up here at 10 o'clock perhaps. Is that, Rabbi Krohn, does that work? Okay. So we'll try to have Mariv in here at about 10 o'clock.